It's unfortunate what's happened to this hand cannon in a lot of ways, but in one way it got a lot better, meaning in PvE. Crucible-wise, the game's passed it by. I'm going to show you where and how, and there's a simple gauge to kind of showcase that. It needs a true 5 out of 5 god roll. But even if that lands for you, if you do get that 5 out of 5, you're going to ask yourself, at what cost? So it was brought back as a Stasis hand cannon. It's the Prophecy Dungeon, the final boss. While in rotation, you can farm it over and over. The best thing that could have happened to this hand cannon, and the reason that it's going to get used, is because they brought it back as Stasis. But before I get into that, I want to talk about PvP first, get that out of the way. Me personally, I love the weapon. I do. I always have, because it's a feel thing for me. I think it feels great. However, when it originally came out, Season 15, and to put that into perspective, Austringer came out in Season 17. Back then, a completely different sandbox. There was normalized range, a ton of different things. You didn't need the 70, 80, 90 on that stat bar. If anything, it was rangefinder at the time, and rangefinder pushed them past the cap back then by a couple meters, so it was like the go-to perk. It could compete, but nowadays, it just can't. It doesn't have the stats to, plain and simple. Like, the game has really passed it up. One reason, it has sights with poor base stats. Like, that kind of goes hand in hand because it can work. I'll give you a side-by-side in a second. And a note about sights real quick. It's the only way to get a different look or feel for the weapon nowadays, because every single one, sure shot, true sight, whichever one you pick, it's going to have its own sight. But let's look at its base stats. And I don't think that they gave it any help. I think it's just the same as it was in Season 15. 44 range, 42 stability, 42 handling, 40 reload. And those stats are really held back because it has sights. Because if you want, let's say, the most range you can get, that sure shot, it's plus 10 range, but negative 10 handling and negative 10 stability and plus 5 aim assist. Compared to a barrel like Hammerforge, that's plus 10 range, no penalty. Within the sandbox, yeah, sure, it can compete. Let's talk about the origin trait real quick, crossing over. More range and handling in the top half of the mag. The bottom half does increase damage, and we've talked about this a couple times. The bottom half scales up to 3% more damage, and the top half, the first bullet that you shoot is going to be plus 10 range, and the last bullet that you shoot is plus 5 range while in the top half of the magazine. So it's always pretty much getting about plus 5 range. But let's look at this one, and you're going to be seeing it in the background gameplay a lot when it comes to the Crucible. This is Crossfire, range masterwork, accurized, moving target, Eye of the Storm. So 71 range can do okay. It's just that what you had to sacrifice to get there. Crossing over is going to get it to 81 range and like 76 overall range. But when you compare it to, let's say, an IS Luna, this also accepts sights. The difference is it has the stats to back it up. So this is Crossfire, Ricochet, range masterwork, moving target, range fighter. When you put them side by side, really big difference. When you compare it to, let's say, this Fatebringer. This Fatebringer has like 78 more stat points than Judgment, dude. It's just crazy of how much it was left behind. Then we get into Austringer, and that's kind of where I want to leave you as far as PvP. I'm going to talk about the perks in a second, but when we can come to weapons that are craftable, 140s that are craftable, and those are going to be better just out of the gate, like look at Kept Confidence. The difference is Kept Confidence, not too good of an origin trait, but it has Killing Wind. After the first kill, you're at 93 range, 70 stability. It's really, really good. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring it out for a couple games. You're seeing the background. It did awesome. So when Judgment got brought back, it didn't get barrels. That hurt it. And it didn't get substantial stat buffs to compete with the rest of the game. I mean, we're almost 10 seasons past this thing. When it comes to the Crucible, as far as the perks, in the third column, Demolitionist, Encore, Enlightened Action, Headstone, Moving Target, Slide Shot, final column, Adrenaline Junkie, Eye of the Storm, Multi-Kill Clip, Opening Shot, Timed Payload, Vorpal Weapon. So as an example, like most of them, you're seeing them, their range stats going to be 44, 45, 59 if you're lucky. Or if you like completely sell out like this one, 71 range, but the stability and handling's poor. So what this thing needs is something like Slide Shot Opening, or preferably this one right here, Encore Opening Shot. This isn't the ideal setup. It's Crossfire, Flared, Magwell, Stability, Masterwork, but Opening Shot's that 20 aim assist and 25 range. You have the accuracy help, and remember, Encore nowadays, it also gives accuracy help. One stack grants 8 stability and 5 range. A headshot counts as 2 stacks, so after one headshot, you'd have 16 stability and 10 range. But you would want a range masterwork, accurized rounds, Encore Opening Shot, and even this low range one, once I start getting to Encore 3 and 4, getting that plus 32 stability, it feels awesome. But even if, let's say you have Sure Shot, accurized, range masterwork, Encore 4, That is 94 range, 64 stability, 32 handling. Kept confidence after 1 kill is 93 range, 70 stability, 47 handling, 42 reload. It's a lot of work to even get on par with a lot of weapons, and of course kept confidence is going into killing wind. And in this sandbox, a lot of people are using scouts, a lot of people are using pulses, so this 44 range hits at 29.9 meters. That's going to get you eaten alive. Even if you get up to 60 range, it's only 32.2. So try it if you want, but there's a lot of sacrifice for it to do well, and at that point in this sandbox, with all the weapons that have come out, almost at base, they just clear what Judgment can do as far as the Crucible. But in PvE, what makes it great is headstones in the 3rd column. Usually it's in the 4th. That's for all Stasis weapons. And there's only 4 total hand cannons that are Stasis. We have Ice Luna, Judgment, Something New, and Vulpecula. All of them have headstone in the final column, meaning it's going to be moving target, rapid hit, like a triple tap, a wellspring, things like that. With it being in the 3rd with Judgment, you could pair it with damage perks. Adrenaline Junkie, there's timed payload, there's Vorpal Weapon. And let's talk about some of those examples. And of course, it's going to highlight and enhance Stasis builds. Something like this roll right here, Headstone Adrenaline Junkie. At max Adrenaline Junkie stacks, 33.5% more damage, and plus 20 handling. The deal with Headstone, you get that final blow, the Stasis Shard comes up, and some fragments that are nice, Durance. As it's forming, it can slow and freeze, and if they get slowed, it's going to be for a longer duration. There's Rending, primary ammo weapons deal increased damage to Stasis crystals, and that means Judgment's just going to one-tap a crystal. There's Shards, when you shatter it, you get more grenade energy, and then there's Fissures, there's more damage from the burst. And then we have the artifact thing. But what's cool about a roll like this, again, we're thinking Stasis builds, we're thinking Stasis burns, we're thinking Stasis surges, whatever it is. So you can get a headshot final blow, spawn that crystal, shoot the crystal, and everything that it downs will add stacks of Adrenaline Junkie. And once you have that up, it can be refreshed. Lasts for 4.5 seconds. And I showed you that with Prophet, Headstone Golden Tricorn. Really, really cool interaction with the Headstone Crystal. That's something to pay attention to. There's something like Headstone Timed Payload. Now, Timed Payload, it splits that damage, does 30% more in PvE. It's always been a great perk on a hand cannon in PvE. It's good for champions, but same type of deal. But the unfortunate thing, I had to get on my buddy's account because I wanted to try this roll so bad. In theory, if it was fast enough and did more damage, you could get a headshot final blow with the first part of the bullet split. The crystal would form, and then Timed Payload detonating later would explode the crystal. It's unfortunate, does not work. It doesn't deal enough damage to explode that crystal, even when I put on the correct fragment. But if it did, this would be an entirely different video. It'd be Shatterfly. It'd be the second self-proccing Stasis weapon, but as it sits currently, still the only one is Psy-Hermetic because of Wildcard. If you missed that video, go check it out. It's really, really cool. Same deal with MKC. If you were to make a Headstone Crystal, get collaterals with the Shatter, it would stack up and you'd do a reload. And then there's Vorpal Weapon. That's 20% more damage because it's a primary. That means the Shatter would deal more, in theory. But the main one to look for is Headstone Adrenaline Junkie, Headstone Timed Payload. Then we have the tried and true Demo Junkie. There's Enlightened Action MKC. But what it boils down to is your need for a Stasis hand cannon. And this is going to be the best performing Stasis hand cannon it is as far as PvE. It's got a decent origin trait. Ice Luna doesn't even have an origin trait. Something New is okay because of the class ability. But really, with that kit, using Headstone as kind of a jumpstart, a catalyst to your grenade that comes from Shards, and then Fissures making it do more damage. It just works out well. Like on paper, in game, it is the best Stasis hand cannon. And that's enough for me to want to have it. I do a lot of solo play and a lot of solo Master Lost sectors, and it comes up where Stasis or I need a hand cannon to stun, it just works out. This is the hand cannon to go for. But in the end, a lot won't. Just know that it is good for PvE and only PvE. That's where a lot of people are going to find its worth. The Crucible, everything has to land right, and when it does, it's all going to be a feel thing. At this point in the game, I have moved past it. I think Kept Confidence is much better. And of course, there's Austringer and other ones too. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Let's talk about Judgment down below. I really wish that it got a stat update or barrels. One of the two would have helped tremendously. But since it came back with its poor stats, with sights, it was doomed. It was really doomed from the beginning. But let's talk about it down below. Thank you for watching. And until the next one, I am CoolGuy.